Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another Instant Deck Tech. So as you know, Wednesday means it's Wildcard Wednesday here in Instant Deck Tech land, and today's deck is insanely wild. This deck is so ridiculous. On paper, it looks pretty janky, but apparently it's actually pretty good because it took Tenchi to a top 8 finish in a recent Magic Online Modern Challenge. And you know, we talk about leagues a lot when we're doing our Instant Deck Techs, 5-0 to league, whatever, and the Modern Challenge is actually a step up as far as how competitive the event is, how big the prizes are. It's a weekly event, so top 8ing a challenge is actually even better, I think, than 5-0ing a league on Magic Online as far as the level of competition you're battling against. So anyway, congrats to Tenchi on a great finish with a super crazy deck. A quick reminder before we break down Modern Red-Black Madness, we're doing a worldwide booster box giveaway for Hour of Devastation, so make sure to follow the link in the description if you want to sign up for that. Anyway, let's talk Red-Black Madness, and first off, Madness, like in Standard or any place, it's kind of a deck that's built around discarding cards for value. So we have a ton of discard outlets in this deck. First off, we have Crypt Breaker, which looks weird because we're not a zombie deck, really. We're not especially zombie tribal. We have a couple of other zombie producers in our deck, but it's mostly there as a cheap discard outlet. Maybe in the late game, we draw a card here or there from the tokens we make, but for the most part, this is just a cheap way that comes down early in the game, lets us discard cards. We also have Call the Bloodline, which, oh man, I don't even know. 2 mana, you can pay 1, discard a card, you get a life-linking vampire token, but you can only do it once a turn. So another cheap way to discard cards for value, you get a token out of it. Speaking of discard outlets, Zombie Infestation is one of the most powerful ones. So the downside is you got to discard 2 cards and you get a 2/2 zombie. The sweet thing is you can do this at any time and any number of times each turn. So you can potentially just discard your hand and turn that into a bunch of zombie tokens. And then finally we have Liliana the Veil, which is a discard outlet that also does a lot of other things. So +1 discard for free, super sweet in our deck. Like, decks play this even though the symmetrical discard is kind of bad for both players. In our deck, discarding is awesome. It's what we want to be doing, but it's still bad for our opponent. But we can also make our opponent sack creatures. Ultimate's very good. So those are our discard outlets. So what are we trying to discard? And we have a few different groups here. First off, we have actual madness creatures. So if we discard them, we can play them for our madness cost. We have Big Game Hunter, normally 3 mana, only 1 mana to madness. You get a 1/1, and when it comes into play, you get to destroy a creature with power 4 or greater. So this means Tarmogoyfs, Thought-Knot Seers, Reality Smashers, and remember, madness can be done at instant speed, so we can discard to, let's say, Zombie Infestation, or Crypt Breaker, or Call the Bloodline, and do this on our opponent's turn when they're not expecting it. Grave Scrambler, if you madness it, you get a creature back from your graveyard to your hand. Madness is only 2 mana, so let's just do some cool loops where we discard something, or something dies on our battlefield, we madness our Grave Scrambler, we're getting a token along the way from our Call the Bloodline or whatever, and we get to get back another creature which we can then discard, and then we're making all these tokens with Call the Bloodline, with Zombie Infestation. Eventually we just madness Voldaren Pariah for 3 mana, and we get to wrath away our opponent's board and have a huge flyer, a 6/5 flyer, dodges a lot of commonly played removal. I mean, Path to Exile still gets it, but Fatal Push, Lightning Bolt, none of that stuff actually kills it, so that's our main way of just closing out the game. We also have Squee, Goblin Nabob, which is one of the best creatures to discard. So we don't get any real benefit from discarding Squee, other than like the token we get with Zombie Infestation or whatever, but we can discard it for free because on our next upkeep, it's coming back to our hand. So if we have, let's say, 2 copies of Squee in our hand, every single turn, we can discard them both, get a zombie with Zombie Infestation. We can discard one of them to get a zombie with Crypt Breaker. We can discard one on our turn, one on our opponent's turn, to get 2 1/1 life-linking vampire tokens with Call the Bloodlines. So there's so many sweet things. Even just taking up Liliana and discarding Squee every turn means our opponent's discarding a card, and we're not discarding a card because we keep getting back Squee. Plus, if if we want to get some value out of our Squee discard, we can use our Ruthless Sniper, which is probably the jankiest looking card in this deck. But whenever we discard a card, we can pay 1, put a -1/-1 counter on something. So this takes down Delvers and Snapcaster Mages, and if we have enough mana, we could potentially just use it like the world's slowest Plague Wind. If we discard some cards, put some counters on things, eventually, over the course of a few turns and a ton of mana with all of our discard outlets, we can just eat away our opponent's entire board. Finally, we have some stuff that we don't mind discarding because it gives us value from the graveyard. Dark Blast, give something -1/-1, might not seem exciting, but it is instant speed. We can always dredge it back to our hand. Lingering Souls, a great card to discard because we can always flash it back for just 2 mana, and getting 2 1/1 flyers for 2 mana is really solid. And then Driven to Despair looks pretty weird, but if we cast the front half, we can potentially draw a bunch of cards. Worst case, flash it back for just 2 mana, attack our opponent, make them discard their entire hand, and then we're free to win with all of our janky tokens that we've been producing. The rest of the deck, we get a single Fatal Push for removal. As far as the mana base, we get some fetch lands, some shock lands, some dual lands, and a bunch of swamps. And you're probably wondering, why are there so many swamps? And that's because in the sideboard, we get a couple Blood Moons. So we can bring in the free win card. We have so many swamps that it's not really going to hurt us at all. And then just kind of lock our opponent out of playing Magic because they don't have any colored mana. Then we have Thoughtseize and Collective Brutality. Great against a lot of decks, really, but essential for us beating unfair decks. This is our best bet against Storm and Ad Nauseam and decks like that. We can grind like crazy against fair decks with this deck. We can just generate so much value on the ground, kill some creatures, block forever. But against unfair decks that are winning with spells, these cards help us stay alive. Then we have Grafdigger's Cage and Nile's Spellbomb as graveyard hate. Cage, of course, also helps against various Collected Company decks, more Dark Blasts, and Lingering Souls for dealing with creature decks. And that is Modern Red-Black Madness, and that's our Instant Deck Tech for today. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.